Hi everyone! In this video, I'll be talking a bit about the colour palettes I created for Huely 2022. But first, a little recap. Huely is a limited colour palette art challenge that I run during the month of July. I started the challenge in 2018 in order to get better at using colour, and the name stems from the month it takes place, July, and hue, which is another name for colour. It might seem a bit counterintuitive to use a limited colour palette when you're trying to get better at colours, but it really helped me be more intentional in what colours I use and how I use them. It's also allowed me to focus more on different colour harmonies and contrasts and try out colour combinations I usually wouldn't gravitate towards. So for me, this challenge has been really rewarding and has helped me be more excited about working with colours. So how do I select my colours? I actually find that it can be really tricky to find the colours that go well together, so I spend some time looking at what others have done before me. This includes looking at other artists' work, but also colour palette sharing accounts on social media. You can find a lot of nice colour palettes through Adobe Colour and even in places such as Pinterest. I often screenshot the colour palettes I like and import them into Procreate. Then I start playing around and putting the colours together. And you might ask, why don't you just use the colour palettes that you liked? Well, sometimes I just like one or two colours in the palette, and this way I'm able to get the colours that I like the most. When putting together the colours, I sometimes let the colour palettes decide the topic for that palette. Or if I have an idea for a topic, I try to create a colour palette that will work for that specific topic. I might also decide that working with a certain colour harmony or colour contrast would be really fun, and then I work my colour palette around that idea. When I've figured out what colours I want to use, I create new colour palettes in Procreate. This way, the colours are readily available for me. Of course, I also create proper colour swatches that I can share to my social media, in case someone wants to join the challenge as well. I'd also like to add that I know that there are a ton of ways to create colour palettes, but this is one of the ways that work for me, especially when trying to create 11 colour palettes at once and really needing a bit of inspiration. Even after creating multiple colour palettes for several of these art challenges, I still don't get everything right. In fact, I often struggle with creating enough contrast in the palettes, and sometimes the contrasts seem totally fine when I'm working on them in smaller scale, but it becomes much more apparent while painting an actual image. It can be frustrating to discover these issues while I'm in the middle of the challenge, but I tend to brush them off and keep going, as these are the colours I initially chose. Besides, I can always make amends to the image when Huely is over, but of course, it's also something I'll keep in mind for the next colour palettes I make. While I only select 5 colours for each colour palette, I also specify that there are multiple ways of working with said colour palette. For instance, it's possible to use black and white in addition to the 5 colours. But I also fully support creating different colour variations through the use of transparencies, blending modes, or brushes that blend the colours. If you have any questions about the challenge or the way I select and work with colours, let me know in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. For more of my work, check out my website and my social media accounts.